So it is my honor, pleasure to introduce you all to Alex Wang. He is Ben's mentor. He'll be introducing Ben. Alex is been working for the DNLR as a wildlife biologist. He also is a graduate from the TCBES program, and he is our resident bird expert, knowledgeable of all things birds, and also very much responsible for Ben's love of birds also. And so without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor over to you, Alex. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lisa. Good. Are talking to this mic?
You can talk into the mic or anywhere.
Okay. So yeah, Lisa approached me, or I had asked Lisa to let me know if she ever had any internship track folks that might be interested in working with us at DOFA with birds. And she approached me one time and was like, well, it's not quite birds, but we have someone coming in that's got a background in marine biology and worked at NOAA with song audio acoustics for whales, which is really similar to how we work with the song meters you've probably heard about somewhere down the line and listening for birds. And so here comes Ben. And so from so Ben started working with us. It's like been 2 years now, I feel like. Yeah. And he started with, just a very interest in marine biology, which we then translated into working with seabirds, which then led to Ben working on Mauna Kea and lava flows and trapping for cats. So, but it's been great. Actually, Ben has been a great intern. He's been able to help not just on that focus track of seabirds, but thankfully he's let me throw him at anything and everything with Kalila nest searching, Kalila surveys, and this, as he's going to tell you, we had some very exciting developments with our seabirds this year. So without further ado, here's Ben Smith.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I have a quiet voice. I'm going to use the mic the whole time, hopefully. All right. Hello, and thank you, everyone, for coming in today to listen to our presentations. We really appreciate all your support. My name is Ben, and I'm originating from the Pacific Northwest. First, I would like to do a land acknowledgement. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the Aina on which we gather, as well as Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea, where I spend most of my time during my internship, are part of a larger territory recognized by indigenous Hawaiians as their ancestral grandmother, Papahana Oku. Both sites are sacred to the Hawaiian people, and it's important that we respect and maintain these areas for future generations. Today, I would like to take everyone here on my journey through my internship, working with endangered seabirds on the island of Hawaii. My general question going into this is, why should I care about seabirds? Before I begin, I'd like to provide some background information about myself. I grew up in Seattle, Washington, as a second child of 2 biologists. I was raised to love nature and was privileged enough to travel to several states and countries to see more of the world, including my mother's homeland of the Philippines, which I just came back from. As a kid, I fell in love with penguins after watching March of the Penguins at my grandparents' house. I knew as soon as I watched the films, I needed to make my way to the South Pole to hug a penguin. This love was further strengthened the following year with the release of Happy Feet, a movie that was perfect for a birthday theme of a penguin-obsessed 8-year-old. I kept the Happy Feet balloon in my closet for months till it finally deflated. Going to university, I did not know what path I wanted to go on. Originally, I split between history and environmental science. Going on an offhand comment about the possibility of working in Antarctica, I chose my major of oceanography and graduated with a Bachelor of Science from the University of Washington. I graduated during the height of the lockdown, so most of the work that I was doing in conservation at the time was via a computer screen. My senior thesis on blue whale calls was conducted through my home computer. Even my first conservation job was the same. In that position, I spent a couple hours of my day searching the internet in various library archives, for papers published on growth rate and temperature. Position taught me a couple things. One, while I may spend too much of my free time in front of a computer, I did not want to do that for work. While I'm young and still somewhat limber, I want to work in the field. And two, many species have little to no information about them. Of the grand list of species I was tasked with searching papers for, I could not find anything for over half of them. We live in a time when we're experiencing a great loss of biodiversity all around the world. So much knowledge is being lost to history. Unless we start Jurassic Parking, it'll be lost forever. It was that mindset that I decided to come to Hawaii and take part in Hilo's TCBES program. Hawaii is the extinction capital of the world. At the time, I did not know what species I wanted to work with, though I was leaning toward working with marine mammals to my work as an undergrad. When I was discussing options for my internships, I was told about the potential internship working with endangered seabirds. This seemed appealing to me at the time because A, I wanted to work with endangered species, and B, Hawaii is hot. Maybe I could spend some time by the sea and cool off. And penguins are seabirds. Now, at the time, I did not think myself as a bird person. Yes, I was a little obsessed with penguins. Was I prepared to throw myself into this world? Why should I care about these seabirds? When I first asked this question, I did not have what I thought to be a great answer. Well, I like birds in general, and it would be sad to lose a species. Throughout my internship, I tried to expand my answer to be more well thought out, figure out what the best way to convince people that what I was doing was worth my time and theirs. As I mentioned earlier, I came into this internship without a background in birds, so this was a totally new experience for me. I remember learning on my trip out with Alex not to call them seagulls, and just gulls. What's a lake gull? I was always tangentially interested in birds, but I was not sure if this was the path for me. I also only vaguely knew that what I was getting into, only that the people in the field were very passionate about helping these birds. So we make our way through the rest of this presentation. I'd like to highlight how my thoughts were evolving along with the work I was doing. I interned with the State of Hawaii Division of Forestry and Wildlife, or DOFA for short, under the direction of my mentor, Alex Wang, who introduced me earlier. Alex became one of my guides through the world of birds, helping me with any bird questions I threw at them. I say one of my guides because I had a lot of help along the way. People working at DOFA were extremely helpful, and it's fair to say I could not do much without them. I'd like to extend my thanks to them for making my journey possible. Moving on, while working at DOFA, I mainly worked with seabirds, but I was also brought along on forest bird efforts. This work helped to solidify the issues that native birds were facing on a daily basis in my mind. The main goal of my work was to find and mark where seabirds were creating their burrows. If we could find their burrows, we can monitor them, which can lead to further management goals, such as creating a predator-proof fence to protect their colonies. Seabirds tend to return to the same nesting area and will attract other seabirds, creating and growing seabird colonies. If we can protect where they breed, we can protect the species. Now, it's time to talk about the star of the show, seabirds. What is a seabird? A seabird is a bird that spends most of its life out at sea, only returning to land to breed. Some seabirds have taken this life at sea to the extreme, requiring the need to be on water to take off into the air. Seabirds play an important role in the environment, acting as a means of transferring nutrients from the ocean to land, and are an indicator species for the health of the ocean. When people talk about plastics in the ocean, they often bring up the issue of plastics being found in the stomachs of seabird chicks. Concerning the health of the ocean, it should come as no surprise that many seabird species are endangered. They are suffering from global warming, shifting where food can be found, plastics in the ocean, being caught as bycatch by fishing vessels, and being harmed by invasive species in their nest sites. The two main seabirds that I was interested in my internship were the wahoo, or the Hawaiian petrel, and the ake, or the band-drum storm petrel. These seabirds are native to Hawaii and listed as endangered. There are an estimated 3,000 to 4,000 wahoo breeding pairs and close to 250 ake breeding pairs across the Hawaiian Islands. Both species of seabirds return from sea to the islands around May, returning to the same burrow that they used in previous years. The male typically returns first and clears out their burrow while waiting for their mate to arrive. Parents will typically lay a single egg every year, only rarely laying a second in the case of an early broken egg. They make their burrows in remote high elevation areas, typically around 8,000 plus feet elevation. And sheer cliffs are for this island on the slopes of volcanoes. On Hawai'i Island, we have found water burrows on both Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea. The Ake has been more elusive on Hawai'i Island and has only been found in the Pohakalau train area, or PTA for short before we started. This is where my work begins. I was tasked with exploring the slopes of Mauna Loa for these burrows. My role would be to assist Alex and the soon-to-be hired seabird techs. Tools of my trade for this effort were visual searches, using my eyes, find any sign of birds, using dogs, ecological detection dogs trained on the scent of seabirds, and cameras and song mirror data, placing game cameras in front of potential burrows and using audio recording data to limit the range of my searches. I'd be hiking up and down lava flow fields, searching every promising tourist for signs of birds and hoping that I found the right one. The activity would be akin to searching for a needle in a haystack, except I was also blindfolded. But that said, we did have some hope in my search efforts. At the end of October in 2022, when I first started working with Alex brought me out with him for the first time to collect some of the gear for that year's search efforts. The area that we hiked that day was close to a known grouping of burrows found within the PTA. This area, however, was on state land, so we would have jurisdiction over management. So we were really hoping to find burrows in this area. If you're going to find any new burrows on the island, this would be our best bet. Now, if you're familiar with the events at the end of 2022, you might recall something that happened in Mauna Loa. That's right, it erupted. Before you get worried, no, the flood did not hit our site. It did, however, cover about a mile of the road to the site with new lava flow. The site we had originally planned to search was now only accessible via two routes, either from the other side of the old Hilo Kona Road or through the PTA. And considering the distance traveled, that the first option would require our best option then gain access to the PTA land. This, unfortunately, would take some time to secure clearance to the PTA. Another issue that came up, we still did not have the seabird techs hired by the time I started working full time with Alex. This meant that it would be primarily Alex, dog handlers, myself, and whoever Alex would find that could help us out on the day. Without them, we could not do this work. So once again, I thank them from the bottom of my heart. Our situation was not all negative. We did have two other sites to explore. The first site was known to have water burrows, though this site was at a higher elevation and required us to get helicoptered in. The other site, where I spent most of my summer on Mauna Loa, was on our side of the new lava flow, could be accessed relatively easily. This site had been investigated to some extent the previous year, but was largely unexplored. In total, we have three sites that we explored this summer for burrows. The Maka site, where we had known burrows, the Makai site, which we got access to later in the summer, and the new Mara site, which we could easily access by road. Due to relative unexplored nature of the Mars site, we began by setting up song mirrors across the site, about 500 meters apart, starting at the top of the site and making our way to the bottom, placing song mirrors along the way. Thank goodness it was from the top down, because I did not want to hike up. That day we were quite lucky. Why were we lucky? Well, we had Alex's dog Hopper with us. Hopper is just filled with energy and loves to wander ahead of us when we're out in the field. But this means she often tires out before us. As we were set up the last song mirror, Hopper found a nice shady hole to rest in. This one right here. As we were backing up, Hopper did not want to leave the hole. At first, we thought she was just tired. Then we noticed that she was intent on sniffing something. That's when we noticed a small white blob next to her, a small dried piece of bird guano. We had stumbled upon a potential burrow thanks to Hopper MVP that day. We decided to leave a small game camera in front of the burrow to hopefully confirm a bird spotting. The camera is set up to send us a picture that we can access via an app. This meant that once we set up the camera, we do not have to check out every time we want to know what trigger it is, and only needed to do the occasional maintenance of switching batteries or add a new SD card. Now, Hopper is not an ecological detective dog, though she may have the talent for it if trained properly. Over the course of the summer, I worked with 3 dogs and their handlers. I worked with Kyoko and her dog Zephyr this summer. Zephyr was always great to work with and looked adorable in his helicopter gear, which you see there. The other handler that I worked with was Michelle and her 2 dogs, Ikaika and Slater. Ikaika was always energetic and ready to get moving, while Slater had a more focused attitude, homing in on his smell. To protect their feet, all the dogs were outfitted with lava boots, often DIY'd out of old motorcycle tires. See them there? If we weren't careful enough with the dogs, we could easily injure them and then put them out of commission for a season. Without them, we would be completely blind. Now, I wish I could say that every day was as successful as the first. Mars site had a lot of area to cover. If weather conditions were not favorable, such as during a high wind period, or in this case, a very cloudy, almost foggy setting for us, we could search all day without any success. That is not to say that we did not have any success, though, at this site. We were able to confirm Hopper's burrow with both dogs and cameras, as well as find a new potential burrow. One of our cameras that we placed would regularly capture the launch and off in the water during that period that the camera is still active. That's Hopper 2. We're also doing a lot of initial scouting in the Mars site, shifting the placement of our song mirrors throughout the season. For those who are unaware, song mirrors are specialized field recorders that we set out to listen for the calls of birds. These song mirrors were set to record from dusk to dawn, around the time that the birds would be coming and going from their burrows. They like to make a little call before they head out. Unlike the cameras, the song mirrors have to be manually collected from the site to gather data. Recordings are analyzed after the season, so we don't know the result to the following year. The days that we had to move were often quite long since they were well spread out every time. These were the days that we had to cross the Most where a risk of slipping and hurting ourselves. For this project, I've never worn out a pair of hiking boots. Over the course of the 4 months, my initial boots were destroyed. I go grab. Clearly not strong enough for you. These are completely wrecked with holes all over. The Maka site where we had the most detections. As mentioned earlier, we already had a known burrows of water on this site. This site was great for exploring. The issue is that to reach the site, we needed helicopter access. Water are easier to detect than Akiake, as we can occasionally find their guano near the burrows. Akiake are too much clean freaks. Near our landing site, we found a new burrow with a feather inside on one of our trips out there. That one would be named after me, so thank you. We did have a dog in the case. When we did have a dog, in this case it was Zephyr, we were able to detect several potential burrows in a single trip. We have pretty good camera luck with this site too, with one of the burrows regularly having a walkthrough on camera. During the season, my routine would be to check the camera data before I went to sleep and after I woke up. Part of this routine was to record when the birds were present. The other part was to know when they were under threat. One of the major issues for seabirds across the globe is invasive species. In the islands of Hawaii, this refers to cats, mongoose, rats, mice, and owls. This site, despite being so remote and at high elevation, is still not safe for cats. The previous year, the site had suffered from a cat which had disturbed several burrows. Many were unknown to us at the time until we found the remains. On the day that we brought Zephyr up to the site, we were anxious because the cat appeared on camera for the first time in that season. We split up into two groups. One group tasked with finding new burrows with Zephyr, the other group tasked with setting our predator control. Everything seemed to be fine on the known burrows, the new ones that they were finding until the last one where Alex found 3 pairs of wings. Family of wabu had been snuffed out by a cat, with the wings left to rot in their burrow. Cat was shown on camera one more time that season. We still don't know the full extent of its damage. Wabu do not breed until they are at least 6 years old, and they lay only a single egg with a 30% chance of fledging and leave the nest. Every adult loss matters and affects the population for years. On the days that I was not working with the dog, I was often working on predator control. I was either setting up new traps or I was going to old traps and rebaiting them. This is a never-ending cycle unless we take more extreme measures. One of our main goals is to build a predator-proof fence to stop new predators coming in. Cats are smart and will avoid many of our traps, so it's important that that they do not get in the first place. Rats and mice will eat the eggs and chicks, and though we kill many of them in our traps, there are always more that appear on camera at the site. My bad. I got access to the Mackay site in late August. Alex had gotten to go to the site a few times with Michelle and Slayer before then, and had some cameras and traps set up. If we're going to find an Aki burrow, this would be the site. I went to the site a few times, once with the dog, and rested for predator control and camera setup and pickup. At this site, we had a few potential burrows that we had high up for, but we'll get back to that later. In the meantime, while we were waiting for camera activity, we were setting up traps along the road and near the burrow. Some of these burrows were way up the slope from the road. I remember one day when we were running low on time, debating whether or not we had enough time to hike up about 2 kilometers to get through a burrow while laying down a few rat traps. And then we decided to go for it, because even if we were exhausted afterwards, it'd be better to have them out there. That's the track, by the way. It's awesome. It's not even the camera. Needless to say, rushing up a mountain slope while carrying 2 large rat traps, it's not particularly fun or easy. My feet took quite a beating, even with my boots. That being said, I would do it again. Seabirds were not the only thing that I worked on during my internship. I spent a lot of time on Mauna Kea working with Palila. Palila are critically endangered native vine creeper, only found on the southwestern slope of Mauna Kea. They were once found on the islands of Kauai and Oahu, but now it's estimated that there are less than 300 Palila left on the island of Hawaii. Like most native birds in the Hawaiian Islands, they are threatened by invasive species such as cats, rats, and also mosquitoes, which spread disease, and sheep, which have reduced the density and productivity of the mamane tree that they rely on for food. My work on Mauna Kea consists of a few things: Palila surveys, Palila nest searches, and predator control. Palila surveys were one of the first things I did for my internship. Alex invited me to act as a secretary for him on the official Palila survey that year. This was before my internship had formally begun. I was still wrapping my head around the whole working with birds thing deal. For those who are unaware of what a bird survey entails, it's walking down a transect at the first light of day and recording what birds you hear and or see. Now, I did not know any of the bird calls or what birds were on Mauna Kea at the time. I was also exhausted, having woken up at 3 a.m. in order to get to Mauna Kea in time for this sunrise. At the time, I was the sort of person who goes sleep at 1 a.m. and wake up at 11. Now I have shifted to the 10 p.m. is a late lifestyle. It's also cold up there with frost forming on the plants. Luckily for me, the job of the secondary is mostly to assist the primary and learn about the birds and their calls. These surveys acted as crash courses in birding 101 for me. I would not see or hear any Palila on the first survey, unfortunately, but I would get many chances later in the summer when I took part in Palila nest searches. Palila nest searches involved hiking up and down Mauna Kea, looking for Palila, following that Palila, and then hoping that it would bring you to a nest. While the Palila range has shrunk significantly, it's still a large and difficult area to traverse. The best way to find the bird is to hear it. The issues with that method is that there are a lot of other birds, most notably the Amikihi, calling out regularly. This means that one has to really nail down the call of the Palila, or else they're going to wind up running up and down the mountain chasing the wrong bird. Not all survey days were useful either, with weather such as wind or fog, making tracking difficult. While I was unable to find a nest of Palila that was still active, I did have a chance to observe several of them in the wild on my main surveys. I was lucky enough to stumble upon a patch of Amani that was popular with Palila at the time. I was able to record an encounter with Palila and their fluttering in the site. They seemed quite mad at me for finding this spot and kept yelling at me until I hid away. See this place. Just yelling at me the whole time. In addition to Palila work, I was also tasked on occasion with predator control efforts on Mauna Kea. This year we worked on setting up a large rat grid on Mauna Kea. I took part in setting and retrieving tunnel tracks, artificial tunnels set up with a piece of paper and ink to detect the presence of rats and mice. We then set up a grid of good nature traps, an automatic rat trap that could be used multiple times without maintenance. We had to shift the layout of the grid a bit, so I was sent to retrieve some of the traps. I can confirm that they are functioning. This was not the only rat grid that I helped set up. I also helped with setting up a rat grid at Kipuka Kipamana. We're trying to set up a larger fence around this area and clear out the invasive animals. I have returned to the site a few times now to conduct maintenance on good nature traps, placing bait and changing out the CO2 devices that power the traps. This site is far from the road, and on wet days, one can easily slip. I know that I've fallen even on dry days and scraped myself up. Since then, I have always carried Band-Aids on hand when I'm out in the field. When I first started my internship, I kept on injuring myself too. So I was worried I'd set an impression in Alex's mind of, oh, this guy's clumsy. In addition to invasive mammals, native birds on Hawaii are also at risk to mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are invasive to Hawaii and are responsible for the spread of avian malaria, which has devastated native bird populations. I was lucky to get to work with DOFA, avian malaria team. They helped me on many of my projects with Alex. I cannot thank them enough. When I did help them, I mostly helped them with setup and retrieval of their mosquito capture setup. This setup consisted of several sites where we set up stations with 2 ways of attracting mosquitoes that they would collect mosquitoes from for a week. My job was mostly assistant pack mule, but I did get to learn a fair amount about the threat of avian malaria from them. I also had the opportunity to join them for a session of bird banding. Bird banding is important for creating a record of birds and better understanding their life history. For the avian malaria team, this also acted as a way of checking the spread of avian malaria. We're taking blood samples of the birds caught. Catching the birds for banding typically required the use of mist netting, large nets that birds fly into and get caught in. The nets are mostly harmless to birds. Now, if they're carefully placing them in individual canvas bags, they can be brought into the banding station to be banded and added to the record. We did have a funny interaction where we caught a bird that was in the process of laying an egg, and it ran into a couple of mist nets. So we found it, like, oops, you need to lay your egg. Ran to the next one. Oops, we caught you again. In addition to the 2 seabird species I worked with on Mauna Loa, I also had the chance to work with the koa e ula, or the red-tailed tropic bird, and koa e kea, or the white-tailed tropic birds. Unfortunately, I only have pictures of the red tail here. These seabirds actually nest near the sea, though they're still surrounded by aha, so can't get away from that. These seabirds, these species are also around during the day, so we're able to conduct some banding efforts with them. Catching them for banding is relatively easy, as we catch them using a towel while they're in their burrow, like this, that I'm releasing here. You have to make sure they don't bark up their lunch on you. Mongoose were especially destructive to the koa kea this year, nearly wiping out an entire colony. We continue to put more traps and rebait the traps around the burrows, but this is another case of the need for a predator-proof fence in this area. One of the last parts of my internship that I would like to talk about is my experience working with the Hilo, or the flying hawk. This work was part of a larger project of mapping the territory of Hilo across Hawaii. I helped Kate with recording, banding, and strapping a GPS to the Hilo before sending it back into the forest. Whenever I go to the zoo, I have 2 much-to-see exhibits: the penguin exhibit and the raptor show. So getting to catch and hold Hilo was one of the happiest moments of my life. So I always have this picture with me everywhere. So after all of that, where does that leave me with my original question? Why should I care about these seabirds? Seabirds spend most of their lives out at sea. These seabirds are extra elusive as they are also nocturnal. If we're not careful, we could lose them all without knowing it, losing all future research on the species. Hawaii is the capital of extinction, and it's important to protect as many of these native species as possible. Preserve the biodiversity of the islands. Species are directly affected by human introductions, so it's important that we remedy this situation. The problem will not go away unless we act. People care about these birds. I care about these birds. When I saw what happened to my seabirds, I was upset for the whole rest of the week. This feeling extends to all bird lovers on Hawaii and around the world. That makes it important to do something because we care enough. Because we care is enough reason to act. This internship has had a large impact on my life. I don't just mean my shift towards being an early riser. I think I have left my late night behind me for the foreseeable future. I am now much more conscious of the birds around me, trying to learn the names of all the ones that I see. I'm also more critical of the invasive species around us, especially within Hilo. I'm talking about those cats. My goals have also shifted. I still want to work with penguins in the future. Now I have a different path towards that goal. I want to keep working with birds, hopefully continuing to work with endangered species and learning more about them. There's still plenty of work to do in the future to protect them. As a final note, before I end, I want to return to the Akiaki burrows. Remember how I checked the cameras every day? Well, I got a bit of a spook one day. It turned out to be quite the spark of joy. And a successful burrow. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. That was excellent. We have time for one quick question. Anyone? How about Zoom audience? Okay, I have one question for you, Ben. What advice would you give someone who is new to Hawaii Island and might be wanting to pursue this sort of work also?
Just be ready to go anywhere because Hawaii is so diverse in its landscape. And if you really want to see the cool species that are around, you have to be ready to go over a lot.
All right. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah.